Hello and welcome viewers to another episode on Planet Outlook. This week, my guest is Professor Ambika Aiyadurai from the IIT Gandhinagar. She teaches humanities and social sciences and working on uh, the interaction between communities, wildlife, and policymakers. The big news is new work, a book which is titled Tigers Are Our Brothers, is just out. It's an anthropology of wildlife conservation in Northeast India. So thank you, Ambika, for joining us today on Planet Outlook.
Thanks so much, Ananda. Good to see you finally, and thank you so much for inviting me. And thank you, Outlook Group. I look forward to interacting with you and discussing my work. Thank you.
So to begin with, just tell us about this very interesting title, Tigers Are Our Brothers. And I read a bit on the book that the Idu Mishmis, the indigenous people of the Diwang Valley in remote Arunachal Pradesh, consider tigers as their elder brothers. So just give us a background, how and when this all you came to know. And
Yeah. Another. So this is the book is based on my PhD research in anthropology, and the book talks about relations between humans and nature, and it's very multifaceted. Often we look at nature as green, clean, and vast landscape of forest and wilderness. But that idea of nature is very different across different communities and different cultural groups. So when I went to the Bang Valley, and I've written that in detail about why I chose to go to the Bang Valley, and that starts many years ago. I think I went to Arunachal in 2002-3, and then as a wildlife biologist, where I was looking at wildlife hunting, indigenous hunting. And so during my PhD work in Dibang Valley, whenever I did interviews, people would always talk about tigers in Hindi. Most of the interviews were in Hindi. Tigers hamara bhai hai, and this was very recurrent. And that was for someone who's trained in wildlife biologist and then anthropologist. I found that often we look at tigers as national animal, endangered species, and this very charismatic species, which is very impressive. But there they were talking about their kinship relation with this large carnivore, and that was very fascinating. And this was 2012-3 when I started my PhD work, almost 10 years back. And I really like that phrase that tigers are our brothers. And I thought, what, I will use this for my paper. So I actually wrote a paper with the same title but a different about human tigers are our brothers, human nature relations, for a journal article. And then I actually told myself that whenever I'm going to write a book, I'm going to use the same title. I've been very selfish to retain that title so it's, I think the credit goes to all the respondents who gave me interviews and told me stories about this. And one of the things they said that because they are our brothers, if we kill them or harm them or hunt them, it is equivalent to homicide. It's almost equivalent to killing a human person or killing a person. And uh, and that was very, and because my interest was to look at how nature is understood by different groups of people. I call them conservation actors because my field is wildlife conservation, and I'm interested in how different groups of people understand nature. And that was, that open window to a very vast, interesting, sometimes contradictory, sometimes there's a lot of similarities. One similarity is this, the idea of associating ourselves with nature slash, I'm using animal as a metaphor for nature, and because it's easy to understand. So using tigers, I didn't want to work on tigers, but it just happened that the Bang Valley, there was some interesting conservation intervention and happened to be there. So one important difference or interesting insight that I found is the way, as you said, people from urban, modern people who are with education, who live in the urban setting, we look at nature as one unitary form which has to be protected for the future generation, and then anything that you extract has to be, with a lot of rules and regulations. Sometimes you don't even extract anything. So preservation as an idea of conservation is very strong. even in sciences and wildlife biology. So anything that is extraction is seen as, unless, so idea of sustainability is there, but anything that is used for extraction for human use is seen as, especially in my case, it's hunting. Wildlife hunting is against, Wildlife Protection Act. It's unlawful. And so when people say that the animals, tigers are our brothers and we don't hunt them, that form of conservation ideology or conservation approach was very interesting to me, that, nobody's telling them, there is no law, there's no modern law that is telling them not to hunt. But there is some inbuilt conservation, indigenous conservation practice that they're.
Yeah, so I want to come here and ask you, for the sake of viewers, because I read parts of the book, just give us the background, how this whole concept of tigers as brothers came to the Idu mission.
Yes. So the story that people have told me is that they, in many of my interviews, they say that tigers and Idu Mishmi were born to the same mother. Sometimes they would actually gesture it as if they are feeding the tigers and humans. So were born to the same, they were siblings and they were born together as the same mother. The story is this, and this is something, there is a lot of similarities with the other indigenous groups about how a particular animal and humans were brother and they got separated. It's almost like a, mele mein bichad jana, as in Hindi they would say. So here the story is that they were brothers, they were growing up together, and once they went hunting. So one of the brother went, the human Idu Mishmi brother went hunting, and he got a deer back home, and the tiger brother in the human form he saw this, and he said, so the brother who brought the tiger, he said, why didn't you start preparing the fire? I'll get some more firewood and come back. So when the human brother came back with the firewood, he saw the tiger brother eating the deer raw. That's when he realized that, this is brother, but he's eating the animal raw. One day he will eat me. So he went and complains to his mother, saying that, this brother is not a human brother, but he's a tiger brother. And the mother decides to have a competition between these two brothers. The competition is that there is a river, they have to cross the river. Whoever reaches first would kill the other brother to eliminate them, because they cannot live together and things like that. It's dangerous for them to live close to the tigers. So the story is that the tiger brother swam in the river and reached first, and the human brother was crossing the bridge. It took some time, so he lost the bet. So the tiger brother was about to kill the human brother. That's when the mother thought, this could be could be very dangerous. So she threw an ant nest on the body of the tiger brother, and he started to scratch his body, and then that gave him some more time for the human brother to cross. So finally, the competition, the result of the competition is the human brother won and the tiger brother lost the bet, and the human brother actually killed the tiger, and the tiger's body floated in the water. And the story is that it reached somewhere close to Sadia, and after so many years, the bones were exposed, and these white bones of tiger body was lying on the banks, and there was a bird which was flying on the top, and the bird saw these white shiny bones, and the bird thought that they were eggs, and the bird started to incubate the eggs. And the story is that from the longer bone, the tiger was born, and the smaller bones, other forms of cat family, clouded leopard or a leopard cat. So this idea that you don't kill the tiger because it's going to come back because smaller cat's family was born. So this is a very interesting story, and then that's why they don't hunt tigers, because it's going to come back, and then the story that they are brothers, and it's, even if people say that when they walk in the forest and when they see the tigers, they said they let it go, and killing and hunting is a biggest taboo in the community. And only when it gets very dangerous, they say on two occasions they end up hurting or killing the tiger, is that when it becomes dangerous to the human community, humans, and if they become dangerous to the property, for example, cattle lifting and all. So there are people say that only at that time we will hunt it because it becomes dangerous to human society. If you do that, it's very important to inform the shamans, the ritual healers, and then there's an elaborate ritual to like a penance, and that goes on for like several days, and the expenditure of the ritual is equivalent to the human funeral, which is huge. I think there are checks and balances within the community, which helps conservation. And this story I thought is very important to be heard and told, and also acknowledging that there are other ways of associating with animals and other ways of. So how do we understand alternate ways of knowing nature? One way is, of course, we learn in schools and ecology and all this food concept of food chain and all. But here something is very fascinating that you associate with animal through kinship, and that is helping tigers. And even the Vishmis themselves take credit, saying that they are there because of us. I thought that assertion is also important because the whole credit of conservation is often given to science and protected areas and other forms of protection. But here, when people are saying that there are reasons why we don't, not only tigers, there are other animals which are considered very sacred. For example, hula gibbons. They said even to look at hula gibbons is can be dangerous for us. Forget about. So they don't hunt, they don't harm. And there was an interesting story about a hula gibbon researcher who was in rowing or in Kamlang somewhere. He was looking for a field assistant from the community to study hula gibbons, and he told me that he found it very difficult because the moment field assistant would ask, "What is the work I have to do?" and the researcher would say, "We'll go looking for hula gibbons." And for them, hula gibbons, let them alone. We don't even look at them because it can bring in bad omen. So there are other animals that are considered completely hunting and harming is restricted. But even more fascinating is not that complete hunting, but there are hunting occurs. They do hunting, but there are in my work I have mentioned that some animals are completely protected. Some animals are hunted, for example, deer and wild boar and other birds. But whenever you're hunting, there has to be some kind of exchange that happens between humans and the spirit world because you're taking animals. So this notion of forest as not completely empty. It's not just trees standing there, but there are animals there, of course. But in addition to that, the belief is that these animals are taken care by forest spirits and mountain spirits. And without romanticizing the relationship of this overlap between humans and spirits and animals, in the book I'm talking about, can we acknowledge that rather than saying that hunting is illegal, why these people are hunting, and this is superstition and things like that. Can we engage and understand that side of the story and use that as in modern conservation, and that can there be some kind of overlap and bringing together of multiple ways of understanding.
Talking about research, Ambika, as you said, the Hula Gibbon episode. Also, when you first went in 2002, 2003, with a set of questionnaire that you have written, you found out of place with the stereotypes of wildlife conservation that you took from a city to this extremely remote region where reaching itself is writing another book. And the changes that you notice, the realizations which transformed you as a person, your career from a pure wildlife scientist to now a social anthropologist, mixing, basically becoming more multidisciplinary, if I may use the term. So it would be very interesting for all of us to hear this whole journey, which started like up 2 decades back.
Yes. Yeah, thanks, Ananda. In fact, I should give the credit to my PhD supervisor. I thought this, personal journey, because when you write a thesis chapter about methods, we use what methods we use, and that's it. You say that I interviewed 50 people, 100 people, and I use questionnaire. So my supervisor and also my training in National University of Singapore was very, very useful for me because she encouraged me to write my own paradoxes, my own dilemma of who I am and why did I go to Arunachal Pradesh. For my first visit was, as you said, 2003-4. fresh out of Wildlife Institute. I had done my master's in wildlife sciences in Wildlife Institute of India, prestigious institute, very proud. And then I joined Wildlife Trust of India, a very well-known NGO in New Delhi. And Arunachal was never in my, I had no plans. But something interesting was happening, important was happening in Itanagar. So the Itanagar Arunachal Forest Department approached WTI, and they said there are this group of people, indigenous groups close to Itanagar Wildlife Sanctuary, killing wild dogs, dhole. And Vivek Menon, who is the director of Wildlife Trust of India, he said, Ambika, you studied jackals, right? For my master's thesis in wildlife sciences. And, I had studied jackals, and there is this problem with similar, same sort of wild dog problem. Would you like to go? And I thought that was a wonderful opportunity, because at that point of time, Arunachal was, very few people went there. And also certain kind of researchers, in terms of, because you need a lot of funding, you have to be with very good organization, and then studying some important species. So when he gave me, so these are the places which at that point of time I thought it was closed for people like me, because you have to be, you have to have long-term plans, very good, a lot big funding. And that opportunity, I think I should give credit to WTI. And then they said, why don't you go there? And there was an elephant researcher, Surendra Verma, who joined me from Asian Nature Conservation Foundation. So first time I went there, so we decided to walk, do transects in, this is Itanagar Wildlife Sanctuary. And of course, it was, I thought, at that point of time, my idea was Arunachal was, I'll go there and I'll see lots of animals and all. But this was a protected area where we walked and walked, but we didn't find any mammals. And it's true, actually. It's not that, you go there and, you will find animals very easily. But we saw lots of indirect evidences. And there we had a field assistant from the local village, Nabam. And he was having a gun. And that's the first time I have seen I saw a gun in my life. And he was actually trying to shoot this bird of prey. And I stopped him. I said, what are you doing? Because for me, it's a protected area. You have to be very silent. You have to follow the rules and regulation. I don't know, you can't collect anything, because the training that was given to us is that, don't shoot with your cameras and, that kind of thing. So don't collect anything, leave your footprint. These are the cliche that was, we were taught. But on the ground, things are very different. So I said that, don't shoot this bird. In fact, I stopped him and he said, Madam, only khane ke liye. I'm shooting it for eating. And I said, don't do that. And even now I can feel why. And that episode, I kept on, after that time, I thought, no, this was the right thing to do, because I'm trained as a wildlife biologist. How can I allow somebody to shoot a bird in front of me? And because I'll be party to it. I think I was, and then that episode bothered me. And for many years I've been saying that, why did I stop him? He wanted to hunt that bird just for eating, right, consuming. And I felt that, I did a very that was not the right thing to do. And because he would have anyway hunted the bird, who am I to tell him? I was there to do my research for a short, it was a very short survey. And I go there and I tell people how they're, what the person should do. That I felt that it was not right. But in the evenings, when we did social surveys, I did for the first time I did social surveys, and me and Verma, we prepared a short questionnaire. And when we went to houses in the evening, and there people were telling stories about animals. So in the forest, we didn't see any animals. It almost looked like, the landscape is good, no animals. But culturally, when we were interacting with, during the interview, there were animal stories about trapping. And they said, yeah, and initially people also, my biologist friend also discouraged me that, you will not get any information about hunting. It's an illegal activity. Forest department will not allow you and all that. But when you go to the field and the knowledge that people had, they were actually showing me how they trap animals. And I thought, if it is illegal, why are they sharing it with me? Then I realized that hunting is, it's illegal, and from the legal point of view. But for communities who live close to forest and live inside the forest, for them these are day-to-day interactions with animals. And the relations with animals is not only for consumption, the way we think. Usually in Hindi they would say, Northeast mein sab kuch khate hain. And that was also that in Northeast, all animals are hunted and eaten. That is not the case actually. In many remote places, you don't get to eat meat very often, and these are places very remote. There are no market connectivity, so it's their landscape, their association with animals, not only for consumption, but there is also element of trade. They sell animals, make some cash, and then and they kill animals because these animals are coming and harming, damaging their crops. And there is some pragmatic, to protect their crops, they hunt animals. But another interesting angle is this angle of cultural linkages, with which I thought, because presence of animals were also during rituals and marriages and feast and everything. So that was very important. I thought this is, and when I did a study on indigenous hunting practices in the literature, didn't find hunting would occur as a footnote, but not as a subsistence activity that has to be studied. And I said, this is what I want to do. And I said, and the journey started from there, and I ended up doing a survey of indigenous hunting practices. And there are other scholars who have studied hunting, but they've studied hunting from the market perspective. How much is extracted, how much is sold, what is the market value, and an impact of hunting on the population from the ecological point of view. I also did that in part of my survey. But what was very compelling was the social component, the human dimension of hunting, from a subsistence livelihood point of view, identity point of view. They take pride in hunting, and the knowledge they have about animals and landscapes and how to track them. That is something I thought, it is, because it is declared as an illegal activity. We are losing it, and that's why for me, so shifting to anthropology helped me a lot to look at an activity from an interdisciplinary point of view. And that helped me, again, opportunities about why they hunt, which animals they hunt, what, and these are, it's not a very, it's not black and white. It's not saying that you have hunted and you are people hunt and then that it's a illegal activity and it should be stopped completely. But engaging with them to understand why they are hunting, the anthropological meaning of hunting. So I ended up, I wrote a paper about multidisciplinary meanings of hunting. So it could be understood from an economical angle, or it could be understood from a legal angle. But more interestingly, which is not being studied, is the meanings of hunting and relationship with animals from the indigenous point of view. And I thought that is something which is important. And then that's how this is how, and then going to Dimang was much later in 2000.
So also, although you have been kind of been looking at the community and this relationship with animals, and that there is an established belief that tigers are our brothers. Till 2012, we never recognized the presence of tigers in the Bang Valley. It was not taken seriously.
Mhm.
It's only after the 2012, after technology came in and camera traps were put and tigers were found, then everybody sat up in Delhi and cities where conservationists and policymakers thought of now making this as a tiger reserve kind of thing. And that also kind of brought fresh conflict with the community, because they were always protecting tigers, but that story was not present in our urban communications. And now, I mean, I remember the Arunachal Pradesh Times doing the story on your work and with the same headline and all. And after that, it seems like all hell has broken loose. There is now an open conflict between the community, the policymakers, and even young researchers. So, if you can just tell us about what's going on.
See, yeah, that's a very important question. So even before 2012, there were researchers. It's not a place where also this painting of places that of course these are understudied, but not. There were researchers who went there. They went to study primates, soil, and many plants, and there were researchers going in and out. But when I went there, this is what people told me. That they said, so there was a respondent who told me that there was a researcher who was here, and I told him there are tigers here. And the researcher completely refuted the claim, saying that how can you say there are tigers here? And because it's high altitude, there will be very less prey. And he said that tigers are not possible here. And he said, if you can you get a picture of a tiger or picture of a footprint? So the respondent told me laughingly, saying that how can I do that? So the idea of that, give me evidence, then I will believe that that there are tigers. But if researchers had spent more time with the people, talking to them, you will see evidences of tigers in the rituals they perform. For example, shamans, it's a sacred belt which has tiger canines. Or you stay and listen to the stories, you would see there are mythological stories about that. So one thing is also this a gap between the traditional knowledge and the scientific knowledge. Scientific, those who have scientific knowledge completely discarding the traditional knowledge is also. So for me, for many years, it was not like as you said, it was also not believed that tigers could survive in such high altitude. And when with the 2012 tiger rescue operation, now there is real evidence, physical evidence that there are tigers, tiger bodies, tiger blood samples were collected. So the idea that of course this fixation with evidence is very important. I understand that. So only after that, this was in Singapore when I was as a student, and I saw this newspapers articles, and there was a very nice YouTube video about how the tigers and there somebody there was a suggestion that this tiger Dibang wildlife sanctuary, we could promote it as and we could upgrade it as a tiger reserve. And this is something my supervisor told me during my preliminary survey. And I told her this was so before starting my PhD work, I did a small preliminary survey in rowing and in a village called Korono. While I was there, I could hear tiger stories from Anini. People who talk about it. So I'm talking about 12 hours uphill. It's very far. And then people would tell me stories from Anini. At that point of time, I had not gone to the Dibang Valley, the Upper Dibang Valley. When I mentioned this to my supervisor, she said, Ambika, follow this story. They may declare it as a tiger reserve. And she's my supervisor in Singapore and an American anthropologist. And then I interviewed a forest officer in Itanagar. And then he also told me that, so there was a talk that, because there are tigers and there is an existing wildlife sanctuary, it's better that it is upgraded as a tiger reserve, because then you can more resources, more protection and things like that. So from a scientific management point of view, that was a route that was being taken. And then I decided that I have to go and find out what is happening there. So when I went there, by the time the tiger cubs were already reached Itanagar, and these two tiger cubs were now they're adults and still in the Itanagar. So one tiger cub died because of pneumonia, because very cold, and they fell into the dry water tank. And one is still out there. I think people talk about the tiger even now. And so this incident of 2012, according to me, has triggered a series of research interest and conservation interest by NGOs, research institutions, forest department, etc. While all this is very good, actually, in the name of conservation, of course, tigers should be protected and all. But on the ground, when I discussed with people, they had very mixed reaction. It was not very uniform. Again, it is never a single, very neat story, right? It's never a linear story. So when I discuss with people, and people would say that, tiger reserve, why there's a need for a tiger reserve here? Because we are protecting tigers anyway. So I think some of the things they said, then I told that because there is tigers now, they were rescued, the tigers were rescued. And they said, what if tomorrow there will be another tiger rescue next to rowing, for example? Will you declare that as a tiger reserve? It's a very important question about why there is a need. And so people who knew about, but large number of people did not know about the story that was developing in Delhi or in Itanagar about upgrading the status of tiger reserve. Forget about that. Many of them also told me that they didn't know that there was a wildlife sanctuary there declared, and they were declared in 90s. And then that was also causing there was a past issues, unresolved issues between forest department and their communities, and that added when the story of tiger reserve was developing. And then the mixed reaction was, some of them said that it's good, if the tiger reserve come, Dibang Valley will be at the global recognition map. I think it's also, they also thought there is a lot of advantage because people will recognize them, tourism will come. This is beautiful, wonderful landscape. And then now I think things are changing because there are tourists are coming. There are a lot of homestays. But when I went there, there was no homestays and very few tourists would come only to look at high altitude lakes and trekking. But now things are changing. So the reactions from people were that is it necessary to have a tiger reserve? And some people said that tiger reserve, if tiger reserve comes up, then some of our local boys will get employment as tour guides, and there was a employment livelihood opportunity they saw. And third thing is also the amount of money funds that will come in, and this is important. So this is during my field work, but 2 weeks back, I think I read in newspaper that it is finally, in principle, the tiger reserve is approved. And even though there were a lot of tensions, I think there was a time, this is maybe 4 years back or 3 years back, there was a high level meeting between the forest department and the local community. And I think that was very important because I think finally the forest department and the state recognized that it's important to reach out them because there was a lot of resistance. They were asking questions about without our concern, with consult to us, talk to us, and then decide this. And there was a high level meeting. I think PCCF went there. Unfortunately, I was invited. I couldn't go because of other commitments. And then in the subsequent trip, people felt that they were very glad that the forest department officers spoke to them. And so that was very interesting. But in between, what has happened is because of that, many of researchers doing camera traps, that was also created a lot of anxieties in between. And they were worried that why there is so much interest, the new interest on tigers. And so research institutions, NGOs, individual researchers began to do camera trapping. And then one of the anxieties that people have is that the information that the researchers collecting is not going to help them. In fact, it may be counterproductive because the moment you say that there are this rich wildlife there, the roads may be, there will be problems with road construction or hydroelectric power projects. So that became very contentious during the Italian wildlife hydroelectric. And researchers got involved, and then there was time during my time in the meeting, in the village council meeting, that they will not allow any researchers to come. I was sitting there. I said, what about social researchers? Because I was trying to, I thought they will look at me differently because I was doing anthropological studies. But I think it's real concern that for all of us who are doing academia, we're in academia, and researchers said, when people are saying we don't want research here, on one hand, you want people to be empowered and ask questions, but now they're asking questions to us. And then they say, no, we will not allow any social scientists to do that. But this is sometimes a discussion become very heated, and then, but there are, once you go and talk to them and then see, then they're saying that, we don't know what these researchers are doing. They're collecting data, but they are not sharing it with us. So I think overall, what is happening is people want to be consulted because it is their landscape, it is their ancestral ground. This is their hunting ground, this is their trapping, and water, river and river valleys. So they're saying that whatever you're doing, why don't you come and talk to us? And there was one incident which I have mentioned in detail in my book is that I joined a wildlife researcher for a 4-day trek into wildlife sanctuary. And then we were ready to begin the research. Idea was to plant cameras. And these are again, these are sort of, again, not detailed study has been done. So we, in addition to tigers, you don't know what is there. It's like a rich gold mine waiting, and then you don't know there'll be new species, new forms of subspecies. So we don't. So before we began the survey early in the morning, so what happened was a group of villagers came to meet us. And that was new for me. Sometimes usually you get up and go to the forest and there was a serious discussion about why you are here, what are you doing, who are you, and I was there for previous many years. So some of the villagers knew me, but this young intern, just out of internship from a research institute, he was there with a camera trap, waiting with full ration, 4 days of ration, and field assistance and everything. And now I could see the inability for the young researcher to convince the villagers why he's doing this study.
So I just asked, because we're running out of time, and quick question. Now, there's so much of bad blood, if I may say so, between the young scientist community researchers and the community. And as you just said that this is a gold mine, and whoever I have spoken to, they said Dibang is the last frontier for wildlife and discoveries, adding new species to both faunal and flora. So, how do you see this now panning out in the coming days? Because even I think last month, the researchers were kind of blocked from entering and doing field work. That was also in the news. So, how do you say this is panning out in the coming days?
So I'll tell you what happened. So when I went there last time, there were very serious discussion about. So now researchers, I think there are now even now there are researchers working with the forest department and all. So I have seen researcher even after knowing that there is the situation is not very serious. Situation is not not easy there. Situation is getting very serious because this is the landscape, open landscape, right? You can stay in a remote village and go and study and come back. Researchers, I think this is something we all as researchers should keep in mind, that if the environment is like that, it's better to back off for some time. Let the situation, talk to them and find out what is. And I feel that if people are saying don't come here, we don't do researchers. So there are situations where researchers have gone even after being warned, and that is also not correct, because I think it's time we should understand why they are saying no to research or no to conservation or anything, or anything, any activity that is being blocked. What is the hurry for us to go there? I think it's also, this, I feel that within researchers there's a lot of competition, especially, so there are at least two research projects I know where camera traps are being used, and the study themes are also very similar. So I think it's also, one of these frontiers where people want to go and, reach the highest, and, and in highest point in the mountain and see what is there. And one of the researchers have also mentioned this in a seminar that I organized in Japan in 2019, is that we want to, because I think now the tigers are reported the highest in altitude is Bhutan. Now, this researcher is telling me that he wants to break that record, to find out if the tigers are found in higher altitude in Japan. So I've thought that, why, especially in a place which is, very contentious and, controversial, why would you do that? Or the other way is to have communication. Say that, we are not doing research. We'll just have discussion, and then see, or ask communities what kind of research they would like them to do. I think what I'm trying to do is that, this power hierarchy between, researchers and communities, very, 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 very hierarchical. Can we make that a little more equitable? And can we make the space that, the meeting space between the researcher and the communities a little more democratic, rather than me going and saying that we will study you or study. That's what in my book I have done that. So I'm also talking in a very self-reflexive way. My own positionality have been very difficult. What is it I'm doing? And often people they also mistook me as a representative of forest department. So I have mentioned how they were also questioning me, my presence there. And because people thought that I'm working for the forest department. So only in my second visit to Dibang, after 6 months, I went out and then I came back. In my second visit, the trust building happened. And it's very important to spend more time. I think the problem is that, because of funding, because of time, the researchers want to be this hit and run. You just fly in and fly out. And some researchers have spent a lot of time in Dibang. So I think there is even within the researcher community, there are different kinds of researchers. I don't want to paint either the communities or the researcher in the same, or any group of people. Even the forest department, there are people who have worked with the community, and but in Dibang for a long period of time, people thought that they were not consulted. And how come suddenly all these researchers are coming and they're writing about it in the media? The last interaction, when I published a paper and I sent it to one of my colleagues in Dibang, and he said, all this is fine, all you researchers are writing all these things, but next time don't organize any seminar. So he sent me a WhatsApp message. I told him that I respect that. When I'm out, when I come and I'll have a chat with you. So I think all of us are in the same, all researchers are the same boat, and we should be very careful in acknowledging the presence of the community, what their interest is, rather than doing this research in a very societally disconnected way. I think this disconnection between people when you're doing research is very, very damaging. And even with spending many years there, and I've spent many years there, even tomorrow people can say that, Ambika, we don't want your research. What, then I have to respect that. So I'll be traveling to Dibang in November for this book program there. Let's see how it goes. But one has to be very careful and respectful and of their need.
Thank you so much, Ambika, for this fascinating story. And I sincerely wish and hope that this book breaks all the stereotypes we have in the urban centers and helps researchers to understand the detail, the small nuances in the conservation story chapter. But thank you so much, and I wish you all the best. And ironically, today I am recording this program in a remotely, and I'm just I'm at the edge of the Sundarbans, where the tiger is seen in a very different light than tigers as brothers. But this is the diversity of our country. And thank you so much, Ambika, and thank you all the viewers for joining us. And for more, please do log into planet.outlookindia.com, and see you next time.
Thank you very much.